like to call the meeting to order. Before we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, I would just ask for a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Now let's begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Auditor, can I have a calling of the roll, please?
Mr. Norris.
Here.
Ms. Thies.
Here.
Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris. Ms. Weger.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Auditor. I would ask that it please be noted that Councilman Don Morris is absent from this calling of the roll. This will be his final calling of the roll. Councilman Morris was only on the council, the county council, for a brief period of time. His dates of service were January 1st, 2021 to May 27th, 2021. But he was clearly a dedicated public servant, having been a member of the city council for many years, and a good friend to many of us in this room. And with that said, I would like to take the opportunity now to open it up to council members to speak if they so choose before we begin business tonight. So I guess the floor is open.
I would like to take the time to just share. A lot of us try to come early to the meetings just to get to know each other, and Don was one of those people coming in, and what was sincere, and those of you who know him, it was truly he wanted to know about your family. He wanted to know what was going on, loved to share stories about his own family. Had just been talking to Vicki and I about how excited he was to be performing again and doing things with his family. But when I think of him and what I got to know of him just in recent months, it was very clear his love of music, family, and this community. And it's pretty hard to go anywhere in Terre Haute and Vigo County with someone not knowing him, and also learning about just the impact his wife had on their family and on this community as well. So my heart goes out to the family and all those touched.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Councilman Weger.
my family played music for many years in this community, so I felt a special kinship with him. We talked about traveling on the road for a lot of years, and it was not an easy life, but once you got where you were going, it was sure a lot of fun. And you could tell Don loved it so much, and he was really good at it. You know, he picked that guitar like nobody's business. I always think of him out at the Gibson Barn Party. He played there for so many times. And, you know, I always kid at him, and I said, Greg Gibson said that after Don played there, they swept up 1.5 pounds of toenails off the floor where everybody was dancing. And he thought that was so funny. So he brought a lot of joy to this community, and he loved it, playing the music, and he was proud to to be a part of the government service too. He really loved being on the council, and I sure did enjoy sitting next to him. It was a pleasure to serve with him. He's a good dude.
Thank you. Anyone else like to say any words or have any comments? I would just like to kind of echo some of what Marie had said. Don was a very genuine person. I think some people ask about family and ask how your life's going, and I think they just ask out of habit and just to make conversation, but you could tell he was truly engaged in what he was asking you, and he knew your family members' names, he knew their activities, knew what they were doing, and he constantly wanted to have updates on how things were going in their lives. I didn't know Don real well. I mean, I felt like he was a friend, but I didn't know him real well. He grew up with my father in the same neighborhood up in Highland, and that's how I come to know Don initially. And obviously last year there was a campaign that was quite different than what we've ever seen before, but he and I stayed in contact, and although we were running for essentially the same seat, I felt like he was supportive of me, and I was supportive of him in the sense that I wanted to see him do well. And if that meant that I didn't do well, then I was fine with that because he's a good guy. A funny story that occurred this year, probably in February, Don was doing fundraisers last year. He was doing these little bits in his house where he would play songs, they'd make requests, he raised money for Catholic charities and other charities, and he did very well with it. I tried doing my own thing, trying to raise money, and I was able to raise some money for church in West Terre Haute, and it was successful, but not quite as successful as what Don's was. And Don had pledged to give me $50 for my fundraiser, which I thought was great, especially since, as I said, he and I were running for the same office essentially, and he didn't pay the money last year, and it wasn't a big deal. You're wrapped up in campaigns and everything going on with COVID. Everybody's trying to figure out life, how to live life a little bit differently. But this year, and it was in Clissa Miller's office, he gave me $50. He said, "Here it is." I said, "What's this?" And he said, "I owed you money." And I asked for what. He told me. I said, "Don, that's a long time ago, bud. I don't want that money." And he said, "Well, if you don't take it, Cheryl's going to be mad at me." She said, "I had to give you that money. It was owed to you." And I said, "No, we're not going to do that." And he demanded I take it. So he walked out. I got an envelope from Calissa, county envelope, put the money in there. On the front of it, I wrote X's and O's on there and hearts, and put "from your secret admirer," put the money in there, put it in his mailbox. Next meeting, I come out, and the envelope's here, and he wrote on the envelope, "I know who you are." But no, Don was a great guy. He's going to be sadly missed. He meant a lot to this community in so many ways. He's been around for a long time, and after I learned of what had happened to him, I told a friend of mine, I said, this one's going to hurt a lot of people because there's not too many people in this community that are more well-known and more popular and more liked than him. And as I said, he was just a genuine person and just a great person. So I'll be dearly missed. Would anyone else like to speak? If not, we move on to the fun stuff. First up, we have the first reading by summary reference of proposed ordinances and resolutions. Before us, we have ROC 2021-028. It's an additional appropriation ordinance 2021-18, Beale County Prosecutor's Office, appropriation into return of fugitives line item. Looks like the information is on page 4 of our booklet. Yes. Yeah. Next, we have ROC 2021-029, additional appropriation ordinance 2021-19, seized asset fund appropriations into operating expenses and confidential funds line items. And that is on page 5. Next, we have ROC 2021-030, salary ordinance 2021-14. It's to amend salary for deputy clerks, assistant supervisor, and supervisor. It's on the following page, starting on page 6. So we have those items. Next is a list of annual tax abatement compliance reviews that we have before us. And that is ROC 2021-031. You should have some information within your packet, as well as some additional information provided prior to the meeting outside of the packet. First, we have on page 26, Steel Dynamics, Heartland LLC, personal property. And I'll read all these off, and then we can go back over after I address all of them individually. We can go back and talk about them. Next is Advix Manufacturing Indiana LLC. That's for personal property. Federico Recycling Midwest Inc., personal property. Casey's Marketing Company, personal property. Casey's Marketing Company, real property. Futurex Industries Inc., real property. Federico Recycling Midwest Inc., personal property. And again, those start on page 26, and we have some, in addition to that, some items that were submitted after the agenda was put together. And these would be the inserts that you're given. There should be 3 additional items. Did everybody get those? They're stapled together. Right. So the 4th item is this. So here's- Okay. I only have the one Futurex. Yeah, I had the Futurex for real property. Yeah, I didn't have the Futurex for personal. So we have, correction, there's 4 that are going to be inserts to the booklet. So it'd be Futurex, personal property, Select Genetics LLC, personal. Tyson Presta North America, personal. Tagleaf Industries Inc., personal. And those should be the 4 inserts. Does everybody have that information? Okay. And I think there's also another insert that was provided with some figures, just kind of some reference points. Everybody had that as well, a longer sheet. So with the abatement review, is our responsibility to, as a council, to review the items within 45 days of receipt, determine if they are in compliance, or whether they have substantially complied with the statement of benefits, which would be the number of employees, salaries, investment in their property that they promised to make in order to get the abatement that was given to them. If they're not found in compliance, then we as a council can submit documentation to them why we feel they're not in compliance and then move forward accordingly. So I don't believe this calls for any action that we need to take tonight, obviously, but it certainly is open for any discussion. If there's anything that you see at first glance or in previous review prior to the meeting tonight, or any discussions you've had with different companies or representatives from those companies regarding the abatements, we can certainly discuss those now. Councilman Thompson?
How many do we have that have not been in compliance with their paperwork? And from my understanding, that paperwork was due May 17th. Can you name those 9? Is this the first year those 9 have not complied? Do you contact them? Is that the route we want to go?
So some of these companies have submitted documentation for instance, maybe a personal property, but not the real property, or vice versa. So they've done one and not the other on some of them, it looks like. While, for instance, Saturn Pet Care hasn't done either, apparently. It's concerning to me why some have chosen to do one and not the other, and would create cause for concern for me why they wouldn't do both at the same time, and is there something that they don't want us to know? Yeah, I think if we could touch base with each of them, find out where the documentation's at, if they've even submitted any. May have not submitted it, maybe they did submit it at another location, but if they have submitted it somewhere else, obviously we'd want to see the original documentation, the actual submission the first time. So if we could check on that, that would be great, and then maybe have that documentation to the council prior to next week's meeting, if at all possible, so we can review it in advance and have an open discussion at the next meeting. Would be great. Is that agreeable? Yes. Any other thoughts or questions right now concerning the abatement information we have before us? Appears there is not, so,
Can I,
yeah, sure.
and I don't know, if you look at the one that ThyssenKrupp Presta submitted, I am not able to make heads or tails of their salary information when I look at it, which it would be in the stapled packet that you received, the second one. I don't know if you want me, when I contact them, to ask them to clarify those numbers, because they do not make sense to me. You know, because on the number of employees retained, they estimate 188, but they're showing they've only retained 33.
Right.
But they have 221 employees, so I don't know. Do you want me to ask?
Yeah, we
that
probably need
as
to,
well?
I think, because it's showing actual 221, 188 retained, and it says estimated and 33 actual. I mean, I'm wondering if they haven't just completed the paperwork incorrectly, the numbers inputted them in the wrong field. So yeah, we probably need to clean that up.
Yeah, especially
That's
when
pretty
you
far
look at
off.
33 employees or at almost $8.
Right, right. Yeah, I think if we can get that cleaned up, that'd be great.
Yeah, we need to go work there.
Yeah, that'd be great, if you can get clarification on that. I'm assuming they've inputted some information in the wrong fields, just inputted it incorrectly.
Okay. So I'll see if I can get clarification on that.
Great. Anything further? I'll move on to public comment. Open up this time for public comments, and it appears there's no public comment. So we'll go through everything. Next, communications from elected officials, other officials or agencies of the county. I think we have another point for you, don't we? Are you speaking about the agenda items? Yeah, sure, go ahead, that'd be great. Yeah.
Good evening, Rob Roberts with the Vigo County Prosecutor's Office. I do have two things on the agenda, but I just wanted to come before you and kind of give you a little bit of prep for another request that's going to be coming through soon. We've had a lot of jury trials this year already, just in the first 6 months of the year. The calendar being the way it was during 2020 due to COVID, a lot of the bigger trials have all stacked up, and we've had them essentially going back to back for many of the weeks since the courts opened back up. A number of those have involved having our local forensic pathologist, Dr. Adiagbo, testifying at trial, and we've recently received 2 of his bills. The first bill being for one of our jury trials in the amount of $6,700, and that was a discounted rate by $2,000 off of the initial bill of $8,700 that he sent. The second being for $10,200, which is discounted $7,500 off of his normal rate of $17,700. These 2 bills alone would wipe out almost 60% of our annual trial and investigations budget that was approved last year. I am going to meet with Dr. Adiagbo. He did offer to meet with me and discuss his billing and see what we can get worked out. But I just wanted to let you know that because of the number of trials that have taken place, that means more depositions, that means additional investigation taking place, and obviously fees for expert witnesses that have also been coming through and will continue to come through. So because of some of these items, while we are coming before you to make some requests today for other areas where the expenses have been beyond what is anticipated, I just wanted to kind of put everybody on notice that I'll be coming back and asking for even more. I apologize for that. Unfortunately, when we were doing the budgets last year for 2021, nobody fully anticipated how the courts were going to reopen and that there would be only 1 or 2 trials during the entire last 10 months of last year, and that everything would kind of tsunami and crest all at the same time here. So while I don't expect that to change the amount of budgeting that we'll be requesting drastically for 2022, we are going to be needing some additional support here, so thank you. Yes.
Those are pretty hefty invoices. How does that compare to the previous forensic pathologists and how the billing was there?
For the last 20 or so years, the office has primarily used Dr. Roland Core. We have occasionally, when he has been unavailable to do the initial autopsy on a case, the autopsy on a case, we've reached out to a coroner in Bedford, Indiana, that has done autopsies during his vacations or during a time when he was injured. And same thing if we have cases where a victim is transferred from a hospital here in Vigo County over to Marion County, where they then pass and the autopsy is done where the person died. These bills are substantially higher than the ones we've received in the past, and I don't have an explanation for that yet. I am going to try and schedule a meeting with Dr. Adiagbo here in the next couple of weeks, see if we can get a better understanding of what he's looking at. But it's significantly more. I don't have an explanation as to why. And unfortunately, we don't get to pick who does the autopsies. That's something that's handled by the coroner, and I'll probably be asking the coroner to be a part of those conversations as well.
Is that billing for the autopsy itself, or is it for courtroom testimony or preparation?
It's not for the autopsy itself. The autopsy itself is covered by the coroner's office as far as those expenses. This includes trial prep, deposition time, pretrial interviews, travel time to and from the courthouse, as well as the time for trial testimony. And I can tell you that the flat fee for trial testimony is $5,000, regardless of whether it's a half an hour or 3 hours of testimony from the looks of this. So, again, I'm going to negotiate and see what we can do to try and bring that down, but I just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention since that's, since I haven't had an opportunity to come before you guys yet this year, and unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to be having to come before you multiple times. Unfortunately for you, not for me.
Yes. Yeah, I'm puzzled here, quite honestly. Yeah. Go ahead, Councilman Wilson.
Hi, Mr. Roberts. I'm just curious about last year's budget. Is this a surplus? Would you have a surplus in there that might cover some of this since you didn't have to use it last year?
It doesn't roll over.
It
It's
doesn't
all
roll
part
over.
of general fund money. So
Okay.
because we didn't use it last year, it just
It
reverts
goes-
all back to the general fund.
Gotcha. Okay, just point of clarification. Thank you.
Absolutely.
The appropriation dies at the end of the year.
Other questions?
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
You're not off the hook yet, Rob. Any other communications from elected officials, other officials, or agencies of the county? There are none. Reports from committees? There are none. Ordinances relating to appropriations. First up, additional appropriation ordinance 2021-18, ROC 2021-28. Vigo County Prosecutor.
This appropriation is from our return of fugitives line item or extradition of fugitives. These are people that have warrants out for their arrest but have fled our jurisdiction. Generally speaking, the majority of those are handled through ground transports by our sheriff's office. Many of those are just people that have gone over state lines to Illinois or somewhere other neighboring states or even elsewhere in the state of Indiana. Occasionally, we do have warrants where people are arrested on our warrants, and it's more of a distance away than what is feasible to safely ground transport by our sheriff's office. So we contract with Nicolas Cage, Con Air, anyone? Essentially, that's what they are. That's what they do. They have different routes that they take all over the United States where they will pick up prisoners and then they will bring them back to whatever location is needed. Again, we generally try to do that in an economical fashion, so if that's the situation, it's going to typically be only in the higher levels of felonies that we do that. If you look at the 4 that I outlined in our request, 3 of those are all serious violent felons charges, and one of those was a failure to register as a sex offender. Being only a level 5, quite often on level 5s, we choose not to extradite them, but I know if we had arrested somebody in our community that was a wanted sex offender from another community, I would certainly hope they would take them back rather than leaving them here, and so I felt like it was necessary in that situation to have him transported back. Typically, in the past, we've had roughly $6,000 to $8,000 allocated each year, and that has been sufficient. But as you can see, just in the first 3 transports, we exceeded our $3,000 budget there, our $6,000 budget right up to the crest of that. And we have an outstanding bill currently of almost $4,000 for a transport from California. For those of you that haven't had me come before you before asking for any of these types of funds, one of the promises that I make anytime I ask for an additional line item of funding is that I will not then transfer that money to any other line item. So if I ask for money from you for transport of fugitives like this, that is the only thing it's going to be used for. I'm not going to turn around later this year and ask to transfer that into office supplies, so that you know when you appropriate this additional request that we make, it's only going to be used for that purpose, and anything that is not needed for that purpose is just going to, as Calista just said, die at the end of the year or revert back into the general fund at that point. It's not going to be used for any other purposes. So that is why I asked for an additional appropriation of $15,000. Do I think we're going to use all of that? I certainly hope not, but rather than having to come back before you once again later this year, if we did 6,000 now, 6,000 later, whatever, just come before you, ask for one amount that I'm pretty confident will get us through the year, and again, I will not use that for any other purpose.
Any questions or comments from council? Councilman Thompson?
Why has this cost gone up so much? Do you know?
I don't know that it's gone up dramatically. I know we've had transports from California before that were in the $2,000 to $2,500 range. I'm assuming, I know they have additional safety procedures that are required due to COVID during this time period. And in fact, when they send out their agreement to us, they give us a document that outlines all of the changes that they've made due to COVID. I'm guessing it has to do with just a standard increase in fees due to COVID and costs of fuel, things like that. It's not a dramatic increase in costs. It's just we've already had 4, and a typical year we may have 2 or 3. I can't remember the last time that we've had 4 or 5.
How do they transport them, by bus or
No, it's
commercial
Con Air. It's by
plane or
airplane.
private plane or?
Yeah, they have
Commercial?
it's their own. No, it's their own service.
So,
Southwest, yeah. No, it is. It's their own service, and they have a route that just takes them to different spots throughout the United States. And so when they get close to Los Angeles, they'll bus people over to their plane in Los Angeles.
Drop
And
them off where they're needed.
same thing. Right. We had one earlier this year that was, again, it was a serious violent felony charge. They were in, I want to say it was Kansas or Wyoming, but because that was so far out of any of their routes, they actually quoted us over $5,000 for that. And so that, in discussions with the sheriff, they decided that rather than incur a $5,000 bill for that, they felt like it overall, the balance of everything, they actually did a ground transport where they went out and picked that offender up and brought them back. If we can hire or charter our own flights, I'm sure the sheriff would be glad to do that. That might be a little expensive.
Any other questions or comments? Moving on. Additional appropriation ordinance 2021-19, ROC 2021-29, seized asset fund.
Thank you. This request is for additional appropriations out of the Seized Assets Fund. Seized assets are essentially income that are derived through investigations, typically drug seizure money. That money then goes through the court process, and once the forfeiture is completed, that money is deposited into a county account that was set up by ordinance through this body many, many years ago. Generally speaking, when it comes to budgeting each year, we try to be very conservative in our estimates of income. And so if you look at our estimates of income from last year and what will be coming through this year, you'll see that we're relatively conservative in that. However, the first 6 months of this year have been fairly productive in closing out cases. We don't know when a forfeiture case will close. Sometimes they close early, sometimes it takes a number of years because the criminal case takes a number of years to get resolved. So we can't always predict when that income will happen. So again, we try to be conservative for budgeting processes. However, currently, well, at least as of the last statement that I received, the ledger indicates that that fund is well over $100,000 currently. And the Drug Task Force has made requests for additional funds, both for operating expenses and for investigatory expenses to be appropriated out of the income that they have generated.
Any questions or comments from council?
Mr. President, for you said the operating cost, what kinds of things could you explain to us? Like, is that overtime, or is it because there's so many cases they're investigating, or?
It's primarily, that first part of the request is primarily to cover their overtime. Their division typically works during the day, but many of their detectives are called out at night, traffic stop, and they find a half a pound of methamphetamine. So rather than just having the officers respond to that, they'll call out Drug Task Force members. So they have a significant amount of overtime. The operating expenses for confidential funds is the second part of the request, and that's generally what they use to make their controlled purchases, whether it's part of the transaction or whether it's payment towards a confidential informant for those that are doing it for the monetary gain.
Are we seeing increased activity? Is that why we're seeing more overtime, or? I don't want to assume anything, but.
I will be coming to you during the budget process with updated numbers. If you look at our numbers from 2016 to 2017, and these are just cases filed, these aren't necessarily all the investigations that they do, but just cases filed. The Drug Task Force in 2016 and 17 was roughly the 350 to 380 cases. It's steadily increased by about 20% per year. Last year, they had 660 cases. And when I checked in April of this year and ran the numbers, they were on target to match the 660 again, roughly. I think it was 658 if everything would have remained consistent through the year. But that first third of the year, they were on target to hit 660 again. So yes, it's been a dramatic increase.
Here. Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Appears there are none. Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. Normally, I would stick around for your meetings, but I have to go get ready for court tomorrow, so I'm going back to the office, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Salary Ordinance 2021-14, ROC 2021-30, Vigo County Clerk.
Hello. I'm Leanna Moore with the Vigo County Clerk. This is Joyce Rayleigh. She's also with the clerk's office. This is a request that we have diligently tried to get our salaries increased over the last 4.5 years that we've been in the office. The company that Vigo County used for salaries is completely obsolete and not accurate at all for our office. We have done a lot of research, and the things that we do as Vigo County clerks are some of the same things that they do in the prosecutor's office and the courts. So we are asking to change the comment to reach a higher, more equal amount. We've kind of broke it down for you a little bit. In the last 4 years and 5 months, our office has saved the county around $260,556. I know that other offices, like the prosecutor's office, they also earn money that comes back to the general fund. But I want you to see that the clerk's office is doing that as well. We are trying every avenue to regenerate and bring more money in for the general fund as well, besides just taking from it. We will be adding in another $20,000 by the end of this month for the sale of our e-poll books. So we will be adding in another $20,000 that we've actually saved the county. Yeah. All this goes back into the general fund. And I think one of the reasons that the clerk's office has kind of been stagnated is because we have been put in with some of the offices that don't do the same things that we do. We actually do legal work in the clerk's office. All election work must be by state code and verified. That is something that every deputy clerk has to do. We have to know what is in those code books, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. They're not allowed to give out legal advice, obviously, and we do not do that. But all deputy clerks in the courts do legal work. They process warrants. They do all the things that the prosecutor's office does. The prosecutor's office, it funnels down. You all know how that works. It goes from the prosecutor's office to the deputy clerks in the courts, as well as some of the clerks in the main office. Records must know what records are public and public record by state code and trial rules. That's something else that our office is responsible for. We have put a lot of work into this, and we have created new job descriptions. We want to make it one job description for all deputy clerks, not 5 different job descriptions. A deputy clerk is a deputy clerk. We cross-train everyone so that they can do every job. We don't have the luxury of having an empty seat. If somebody's missing in one of the courts, somebody else has to fill in for that day. So all of our clerks have to be cross-trained, and they have to know all of the knowledge, not just what they do in the main office, not just what they do in the courts or any of the other offices, juvenile center, 4D court, bookkeeping, records. They all are cross-trained. And that has never been done in our office until Brad Newman and I came in, and we started getting it acclimated so that everybody can do every job. With that being said, our juvenile department, I mean, they are responsible for chins and numerous things that cases that most people don't even think about. DCS, we get records requests from DCS. How many do we get, Bob? And we're not talking about one little case. We're talking 2 or 3 books. And all of that information has to be gone through and given to them. And I know you guys can read and go through all this stuff. I'm just kind of wanting to give you an overview of the things that we do is very time-consuming, very legal-oriented, and we shouldn't be boxed in with other offices that are just, you know, they're doing things that, yes, their offices are all busy, I get that. But we are in the courthouse doing court work. And that is the difference. We're not, you know, I don't know how to explain it quite right. Yes. brought a pack with me, just so you know.
I'm LaDonna Ingram. I'm the supervisor of the absentee voters office. Most of you know me. I also supervise all of our girls that work in the courts. All the stuff that we touch, whether it's elections or in the court, is very time sensitive and very important. When you need a murder warrant on the day after Christmas and the courthouse is closed, the clerk's office has to do that. The entire time of the pandemic, our office was there every day. Our girls didn't work from home. The reason that the courthouse functioned was because the clerk's office was present. And it's very important for us to be there. And we all take pride in doing our jobs as well as we can. And I just think like the reclassification would acknowledge how much legal secretary work we actually do. Where as of right now, we're not classified there.
And the thing that's happened is we are a revolving door clerk's office. We hire people. We have hired 26 people in 4 years. And the reason is they get in, they get their foot in the door, they get their knowledge. Well, the prosecutor's office is paying $4 more an hour than what the clerk's office pays. So of course, they're gonna go to that job. No. We actually did a survey of how many deputy clerks have taken other jobs.
And
That are now in proposed positions. And we do not ever want to deny someone making money. That's the name of the game. You know, we're all here because we have a job. But it needs to be fair. And our clerks are not out. And that's why we're coming to you about this.
during election, a lot of our staff either work at vote centers or they're behind the scenes getting everything ready. They still, their full-time job.
And they put in lots and lots of hours.
And there's some of them that they work hard enough half hour. They get lunch early.
So I employ you to seriously consider this. I know it's gonna cost the county, because we're not talking about just $4 an hour. We know that. We're talking about perf, we're talking about insurance, we're not, FICA. We know there's more expenses than just $4 an hour. But it's really hard to get people, good people, to stay when they can go 2 floors up and make $4 more an hour. And I understand, you know, the whole process of going, you know, we were great in step, and the company came in and changed all that. Okay, that's water under the bridge at this point. But that was 2015. This is 2021. It's been 6 years. It has not been readdressed. And I know for a fact the deputy clerk's job descriptions were very minimal. They did not even minutely include all the work that is included in a deputy clerk's job.
We did a lot of work on making sure that what we actually do is in that job description, because so much was missing. So definitely if you read over those and have any questions. Even past night contact us, we're always, absolutely.
So the revised versions they're better,
Oh, very much.
very much better than what you
I-
previously had. I mean, it's a better representation of what you actually
I'll just
do.
give you an example. My job description as a chief deputy clerk is the same job description as a deputy clerk in the old.
Right. And that's all been cleaned up since.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
we've tried to, we formed a committee. We had a meeting and we formed a committee within our office, and these people that are here with me today was the committee. They diligently went line by line by line on those job descriptions. And like I said, there was 4 or 5 different job descriptions within the clerk's office.
I can say whenever I was asked for my job description when they went with the new company, I had been with the county for about 6 months, and they were like, oh, just write down what you do. I've been here for 6 months. But, okay, and I didn't even know a third of what I did at that point. And that was my job description until I got a promotion. But, so those job descriptions were just not complete, yeah, at all. And even when I was originally hired in, I was originally hired in to primarily work in the elections office, the absentee voters office. But I also drove through the courts, and none of that was included in my job description. So there's just a lot of knowledge that as a clerk you have to have, and it takes a good 6 to 9 months for somebody to completely train, and then you've got someone completely trained, and it's, oh, well, I'm gonna get $4 an hour to walk upstairs, and I don't blame them, but it's hard, and then you're back at square one, and we waste all that time training, and so it's really hard.
I have, it's been there 10 years for base. Longevity. That really good.
But there again, we
Base
have,
salary.
yeah,
Thing.
we have deputy clerks that have been 15, 16 years at base salary. They do get their longevity, of course. But,
And their base salary is less than somebody working 2 floors above.
questions?
Any questions or comments from council?
Sure.
I'm Bob Bly, but I'm a supervisor with the clerk's office. I've been here 15 years. I normally don't say a whole lot. I'm kind of known as the organizer. And I think really what these girls are saying is they'd like commensurate salary with the work that they do. And I think if you look at those job descriptions, you'll find that the jobs outlined there are certainly deserving of it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Wilson?
I know that we've, in other meetings, when people have brought up salary issues, we've talked about doing a reevaluation with WIS, and I think this is just one more example where it's necessary. It's been several years. A lot of things have changed, and, COVID being just one part of it. It's been 6 years, I guess, since this was originally done, and I think that, like I said, this is just one more example of it's necessary that we reevaluate everything. With the understanding that it's part of the supervisor's responsibility, as well as the person writing down, to not just say, well, just write down what you do. The supervisor should know what each person does, and then double-check what they wrote down, and then submit it, and that might have, I don't think, it appears to me, and just the brief bits of knowledge that I've gotten from different meetings, that wasn't stressed well enough, and it wasn't overseen well enough by the supervisors. So I'm thinking, with that said, if we do a reevaluation, that should be really a huge emphasis, that the managers and supervisors should know what each of their employees do and oversee it and make sure that those job descriptions are more accurate when they're submitted.
Thank you.
President Loudermilk, I just have a quick question. It's not so much about this, but what is the process that we would go through? Does that have to go through the commissioners? I mean, do we initiate, because I think that we're going to continue to see this coming up, and that's a concern of mine too. Or is this a budget type thing?
The process for this particular
Well,
request?
just
or
even
in general?
in general, because we've had multiple, kind of like what Councilman Wilson has said. I know we had talked with, and representation from GIS as well, just to understand a little bit about how it worked. But who initiates, I guess, the process, and how does that get done? Or WIS, not GIS.
Yeah, and I think conversations that you and I have had, and with the commissioners I've had as well, this hasn't been the perfect situation for the employees. Some departments may fare better than others, obviously. I think it's a host of reasons why we are where we are right now. Like what LaDonna had said, some of the issues that she experienced early on. I think there was also some issues with maybe some departments not taking it as serious as others. And then, I think there was a host of problems that had occurred to lead to where we're at. But nonetheless, it has been some time, and there are still some issues. It's maybe better than the step and grade. I don't know. I didn't experience step and grade. I think the intentions here were to take maybe some of the favors, some of the politics out of how people were treated, is my understanding, but I can't speak to that because I wasn't here. But nonetheless, it's the system we have in place right now. We need to figure out how to make it best for everybody, and I think probably moving forward, as Kara suggested, I think that's what we need to do is have WIS reevaluate everything and see where we're at. And I think, too, those individuals working within those departments, they need to really take time to evaluate what they do as an employee, what their responsibilities are, because there may be things that they do their supervisors don't realize that they do on a daily basis at times, quite frankly. And I think the employees need to take that serious, maybe draw up some of their own job descriptions, possibly, present them to the supervisors, and they sit and they have discussions about, is this really a fair assessment of what I do on a daily basis, what my responsibilities are, and then submit the information and see where we're at.
That's what we did as a committee.
Right.
We sat down as a committee, around the table.
And we had our people that's under us work on that, and we took it and put it together.
Right.
And that's why you see it much more detailed and complete, as far as I'm concerned, what we had.
And I think that's probably what we need to see. I think that's what we need to see countywide, honestly, because there has been a lot of angst with what has occurred. And, there's a lot of horror stories out there, right? And it gets pretty personal and pretty upsetting real quick when it affects your livelihood and what you're taking home.
So all we're asking for is equal pay for equal work. And if you look at the job description, compare ours, I think you'll find we're right there.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Before we move to adjourn, is there anything else council would like to address or speak on? If there is not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Councilman Norris, second by Councilwoman Wilson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Me adjourned.